Hello. Just waiting for our writers to join as well. So writers, if you'd like to turn on your cameras and your mics. Hi Beth, hi Laura.
Hiya.
Hello.
And have we got Joe?
Yes.
Hello Joe.
Joe. Hello.
Hi there. And welcome to our second Writing Around the Kids panel discussion. Just to give a bit of context, Writing Around the Kids is a project for mothers of young children to connect with writing creatively. We're currently working in Crawley with a fantastic bunch of writers in partnership with Crawley Museum and New Writing South, and we're soon to be starting a project in Littlehampton. Both Sam and myself are writers and mothers ourselves, and we began this project when we recognised that it was difficult to find time to do something creatively for yourself. My name's Anna Jefferson. I am a playwright and novelist. I've written for stage and screen since 2005, and I have two novels published, Winging It, which came out last November, and Nailing It, which was published in April just gone, just both with Orion, and I'm currently working on my third book.
And my name is Sam Johnson, and I'm a freelance writer. I've got an MA in creative writing from University of Brighton, and I've been facilitating creative writing workshops since 2017. And I've got some poetry in anthologies, and I've had work in Brighton Fringe, and I'm currently working on very slowly, writing a novel around my, fitting it in amongst my kids.
And we're delighted to welcome you tonight to our Writing Life Balance panel discussion with 4 exceptional female writers who have kindly agreed to share with us their experiences of what it is to be a writer. So we're just going to introduce our panel. So to start with, if I can welcome Jo Lovett. Jo lives in London with her family. She works in corporate tax. She worked in corporate tax before taking a longer than expected career break to have a more than expected children, 5. She started romantic comedy writing when she realised she was regularly begging her oldest son to let her do his English homework, but she wasn't actually interested in Haunted Houses or Macbeth. Jo was runner-up in the Good Housekeeping Orion First Novel Competition 2018 and shortlisted for the Comedy Women in Print Award 2019. Her first novel, The First Time We Met, was published by Bookouture in November 2020, and her second novel, The House Swap, was just published in April just gone. Her third novel is due to be published in October this year. When she can escape from her laundry mountain, Jo enjoys reading, tennis and wine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jo.
And if I can welcome Laura Wilkinson to us this evening. Laura's published 6 novels for adults, 2 of which under a pseudonym, and numerous short stories. Her contemporary fiction is published by Headline Accent, and these novels, Crossing the Line, Skin Deep, The Family Line, Redemption Song. And alongside writing, she runs workshops on craft and has spoken at literary events nationwide. Over the past 9 years, she's worked as a creative writing tutor for New Writing South and West Dean College, and as a structural editor and mentor for leading literary consultancies, coaching writers to competition, shortlistings and publication. So welcome, Laura.
And I would like to welcome Luce Brett. Luce was born in 1977 and learnt about her nether regions from More magazine, Other People's Big Sisters, Tampax leaflets, and her mother's copies of Our Bodies, Ourselves. In 2020, she wrote PMSL, a groundbreaking, moving, heartbreaking, sometimes tough, but crucially funny and uplifting memoir about the impact of losing control of your pelvic floor after a traumatic delivery and rebuilding her life while she couldn't control her bladder. Daring to go where many parents' books won't, and unflailingly honest, PMSL is also a long, hard look why all of us, dry or not, should bust the last great taboo in medicine, incontinence and leaking, as a matter of urgency. She has spoken about her condition in print, online, and on national radio, most recently on BBC Radio's The Naked Podcast. where she stripped with the hosts to talk about leaking affecting everything from her ability to join a party to her sex life. World Continence Week conveniently starts on her birthday each year. Welcome, Luce.
And finally, I'd like to welcome Beth Miller. Beth's published 4 novels, the most recent of which, Missing Letters of Mrs. Bright, was a Kindle bestseller. Her 5th novel, Starstruck, is going to be published in August this year, and she's also published 2 non-fiction books. Beth teaches on New Writing South's creative writing programme as a tutor at Arvin, and also as a guest tutor on the MA of Creative Writing at Brighton and Surrey universities. From September 2021, she's going to be the fellow at Brighton University, and she also works as a mentor and book coach for other writers. Hi, Beth.
Well, welcome all our writers. We're going to start off with the really quick fire questions to ask you some quick questions of you all. So the first question is, what book would you take to a desert island? Luce.
True Grit.
Fantastic.
or anything by Truman Capote.
Laura, what would you take?
I went for A.S. Byatt's Possession because it's big, it's got poetry in it, a love story, and a contemporary sort of mystery investigation. So it's got it all.
Brilliant. Jo, what about you?
I thought you need to go long because you're going to be bored. And I thought you need something you know you're going to enjoy. And I remember reading our mutual friend, Charles Dickens, made to read that when I was young and enjoying it to my surprise. So I know I would enjoy it again. I can't remember anything in it. I know it's very, very long. So that would be my choice.
Thank you. And Beth, finally, what's your book?
Got it here. It's Awkward Magic by Elizabeth Beresford, who wrote The Wombles. It's my favourite children's book, but I think it's the book I keep trying to write because it's got this really exciting bit near the end, and I think I keep trying to do that. So if I was on a desert island, I'd have time to work out how she did it.
Brilliant, thanks. And so the other quick question we've got is, who would be your star guest at a dinner party? And I'll start with you, Beth, this time.
I think it would be Nora Ephron. It's a bit late now, really, but I think she would be really funny and have lots of good gossip.
Great. And Laura?
I go for a dead author, actually, Bernice Rubin. So she'd have to appear in ghost form. But she was an actress like me before she was a writer, and she writes wickedly dark, but very, very funny books, a number of which have been made into films.
Great. And Luce?
I was thinking about Nora Ephron as well, but if she's at Beth's dinner, then I don't know, would Dorothy Parker be too much of a mood kill? I'd quite like to hang around with her for an evening, I think.
Well, maybe you could just go to the same dinner, have the same dinner.
Yeah, well, there you go. That would be a great quartet.
And then finally, Jo, that question.
Nancy Mitford, who has just, I think, The Pursuit of Love. I read all her books a few years ago, and I think that The Pursuit of Love is being made into a series at the moment, and I think she would actually be fascinating, especially her take now on where, feminism has got to since she was around 100, whatever, slightly less than 100 years, well, the 20s, 30s, 40s of the last century. So I think she'd be interesting to talk to.
Great, thank you. I'll hand back to Anna for our first question from our Crawley writers.
Yes, so as I said before, we've been working with a bunch of brilliant women in Crawley, and so we asked them what they would like to ask of you. So we've got some questions, we'll put them out there and all chip in, but also if anybody who's watching would like to ask any questions, please put them in the chat and we will, or I think
in the Q&A, Q&A box.
Yeah, if you put it in the Q&A, and then we'll hopefully get round to as many as possible at the end. So in terms of thinking about things in terms of kind of writing life balance, I guess one thing that would be interesting to find out is who writes full-time as a writer, or do you do other jobs as well to kind of support yourself as a writer? Like, what is your balance? So Jo, maybe could I put that to you? Like, what's your kind of like writing life balance look like?
So my my life at the moment, my balance is poor. Because I have 5 children. We've obviously all, everyone in the world has been in lockdown. My oldest son is 18 and my youngest is 7, and they're spread out in the middle. So I've got a variety of different needs, and they're all at different times of day. So I normally would like to write in the morning and then do all my other stuff the rest of the day. But I literally just got an urgent message from school saying that one of my children is a close contact of a COVID case. So he will be at home for the next, there's always something, isn't there? And it's been much worse during lockdown and it's that awful thing. Some people have been far too bored, haven't had anything to do because, furlough, etc., and don't necessarily have a large family or whatever, and then other people have been far too busy. And for me at the moment, I basically write late at night because it's the only time when there is no one speaking to me, or I'm not driving or whatever it might be. So I don't have a good balance, but I mean I'd rather be too busy than not. And I see a time in the future when everyone is fully vaccinated and life goes back to normal, and I think we'll all probably be able to get better balances then.
Yeah, what about you, Beth? What's it look like for you in terms of that kind of balance?
I don't write full time. I write around sort of lots of, the grand title for it is portfolio career, which just means you kind of say yes to everything that comes your way, pretty much. I've got it a lot easier now because my children are teenagers. I think it is. I mean, I'm saying it's easier. I was late to come here because the oldest one, who had her septum pierced yesterday, had lost a bit of the piercing. So I had to sort that out. That's obviously very different from the baby and toddler stage. But nonetheless, I now have, Jo was talking about the time that she likes to write best. And I still do prefer writing at about 3 o'clock. And obviously that's incompatible with small to medium children coming home from school. But now it's a lot easier because they can come in and sort themselves out. So I think despite lockdown and scaffolding lots of things for teenagers during that time, I think my balance is better than it's been for a while, just because they're older. So cling on if you've got little ones. It gets better and worse as well in a different way. That's not very optimistic.
Different challenges with teenagers, all emotional rather than physical.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like Beth and your older children, Jo, mine are teenagers now, and it's the emotional labour that tends to take up a lot more time rather than the sort of hands-on stuff. I used to write when they were smaller. I'd write when they were in bed, so from kind of like 8 o'clock, from about the time that we started this session, that's when I'd write, sometimes till quite late at night. I even tried that kind of getting up at 5 a.m, but both of mine were absolutely horrible sleepers, i.e. they didn't sleep, and then when they did sort of sleep through the night, they were what the health visitors quaintly call early risers. So the notion of me getting up at 5 a.m. to work, I'd be lucky if I got 10 minutes.
They can smell it as well if they know you're doing something for yourself. It's
like the antennae kick in, isn't it? And they're sort of up there. But I don't write full time either. I'd have to sort of slot it around all sorts of stuff. Like Beth said, the portfolio writing career.
When I wrote my first book, I was doing a full-time job. I also had spirited early risers and late sleepers. So I'm afraid mine is a horror story really in terms of work-life balance. I wrote PMSL at like 2 a.m. and things. I used to, when I would try all week and scavenge around my writing time, whether that was on the tube. I edited the copy edits from Bloomsbury on my mobile phone, screen grabbing a photo shot of every single bit of punctuation I wanted to add or sentence I wanted to change. And then I would get home and I would have like 2,000 photographs to go through and do it. And if I had to rewrite a chapter, then I would try and do it. And then quite often I would get up at I'd be lying in bed and think, oh well, goodness, it's like 1 a.m. and I can't sleep, so I get up and do it for 2 hours then. So PMSL really was written in like a non-existent time, but I did do it, and I think that it's worth knowing that even if you've got nothing, you can do it. And I did it, and I'm not superhuman, and I'm lazy, and I'm like rubbish, and I still managed it. And you know, I got like 2 or 3 weekends where my husband manfully controlled the children. Now I am doing something that's a bit more portfolio, sort of by accident rather than design. And I still find that that's quite habitual with me, to just do bits and bobs. So in an ideal world, I'd be like Virginia Woolf, and I would, you know, get up and have breakfast and read the papers and start working at 10:30 or 11 for a couple of hours, and that would do me. But I mean, I've got older children too, and I mean, I find my teenager, it is quite physical, because I spend my entire time looking for like clean trousers and pairs of you know, lost pairs of trainers, and running around the house helping with that. So you know, but I think you can't beat yourself. No, I don't know anyone apart from like 1 or 2 people who I think are probably also stressed about other things, who have the perfect balance. I think it's easy to sort of chase that and use that as an excuse not to start writing, and think, oh, you know, if only I had 4 hours a day where I could do it. And if you've only got 40 minutes, you can still write a book. It'll just take a bit longer.
And I think it's worth saying, you can, you know, I started writing, I had a lot of waiting time, because my youngest, I was desperate for him to continue his middle of the day sleep for my sanity, and he would only go to sleep if I sat next to his cot on the floor, and the kind of thing, you would never do this for your first child in a perfect world, but by the time you're in your 5th and you're desperate, you're like, whatever, I don't care about parenting rules, I just want this child to sleep. And he would only go to sleep by putting his hand through the bars of his cot and holding my hair. So I had to sit there. And then obviously once he's asleep, you've got to wait, and there's that moment you've extracted your hair and they ping awake. So I'd have to sit there for a little bit longer. So I was like, you know, you playing Candy Crush or whatever over and over again on your phone. And then I just started writing. And then once I kind of got into that thing, you know, you have your minutes depending on the age of your children, but there's, you know, you're always waiting for something. You're waiting for little ones to come out of school, you're waiting for older ones to come downstairs. They said they needed to leave the house 10 minutes ago, but they, you know, are actually still in bed or whatever. And, you know, there's waiting, and like, or, you know, you're frying some, you know, you're stir frying something, you've got 3 minutes here and bits of time there, and just, I think you just have to grab any time you can.
I think something I would sort of say is, you can fake illness as well and stay in bed and slip your laptop out from underneath the bed and just get on there and do tip tap away. It's amazing how much you can get, you know, done then, really.
On a sick day.
Yeah, exactly. A sick day, you know, whether it's the weekend and get the, you know, whoever you live with to take charge of, you know, the kids or whatever need taking charge of, and just do, you know, just do it.
Yeah.
And also don't clean your house. Look after the kind of kitchen and the bathroom so people don't get, you know, dysentery or something. And never ever iron.
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly. The ironing is such a big thing. If people ask for their clothes to be ironed, and then you say didn't have time, they will wear them unironed, and no one will die.
Yeah, that's exactly.
When I was doing my job, and it was quite an intense job, I mean, I don't think I took a full hour, but I used to just block off 40 minutes in my diary at 2 o'clock or whatever, and write for 40 minutes. And you think that it won't work like that, but you work with what you've got. And I wrote whole chapters over weeks, over 1 week doing it like that. So I think that but I'd spent about 5 years thinking I can never write a book, feeling quite resentful, feeling quite angry. I'm not going to have a writing career. My children, you know, like, yeah, every time I turn around, they've grown 2 foot and spent thousands of pounds of my money and changed. And now I have to reinvent myself as a mother again, because they're not the same as they were, and all that. And actually, it was just a question of starting it with a thumb on my mobile phone whilst I was at football practice. That's what started it.
But would you give yourself, so in terms of how you see that your week looking, do you give yourself kind of targets? So saying, right, I'm going to write 500 words a day, or I need to write this amount, or is it finding those pockets of time and then seeing what can be accomplished in those periods? How do you, you know, what do you kind of like measure your, like, having a successful week writing? What would that look like?
I do the latter, and it's not very helpful. It's made it very hard to write my second book, because actually it would be much easier. The other thing is I had some very useful advice, which I can't believe I got to 44 nearly, and I'm sure everybody else knows this, but I didn't know this, so in case you didn't, I used to every day diligently set my goals for the day and everything, and I'd have a to-do list, and that to-do list would be full of goals, yeah, like finish this book, and that's absolutely of no use. You need to put a task that you can do, and I had constantly put goals and aims rather than things that I could actually do, and that really did scupper planning my second book. With my first one, I think it was so needs must, and because it was a personal story, it was sort of downloading stuff. But the second time round, I think I've delayed myself by about 6 months, so I do think it is probably worth it. And it might be a case of putting 200 words a day, because you probably can, anyone can write 200 words in a day. I mean, they might not be very good, but you do feel better, and in a week you've got 1,000, and in a month you've got 5,000, and suddenly you start to have something that you can work with, because you can't edit nothing.
I think I had all my kids at the, writing the first draft of my third book, which so I finished the first draft at the end of April. So it was they were back at school for a couple of weeks, weren't they? And then there was the Easter holidays, and my kids at different schools, different holidays, etc. And and they all kind of went into meltdown because they'd had this taste of freedom, and then it was kind of like lockdown again, and it wasn't a great Easter in that regard. And I was like, got to the point where if I've got 50 minutes, say, and I've got lots of other stuff I need to do, I'd say literally make a list from 1 to 10. I'm going to write 250 words really fast, and then I'm going to unload half the dishwasher, and then I'm going to put that black load of laundry on, and then I'm going to write 300 words, and I've got to get through these. And I think if you set as you say, very specific targets and just go for it, I think you're a lot more likely to accomplish it. Whereas if you have a whole day and you kind of go, well, yeah, I'm going to finish a couple of chapters in this, you don't focus, and you kind of, you can fritter time away.
I think I just want to mention we've had a question in the chat from Amy, and she's saying that that's one of her problems is fitting in the time around her kids, and she wondered if there's any actual like software programs that any of you use to kind of keep a track of what you're doing. So Beth, I don't think we've heard from you on that yet.
No, I don't have any fancy software. I make myself a little, so if I'm doing first draft, my goals with first drafts is always to get them done as quickly as possible, because I haven't got a very good memory, and if I start taking too long over the first draft, I've forgotten what the beginning was and the point of the story. So I work out when I want to finish a first draft, and then I work out what that means in terms of weekly word counts. So I don't do daily goals, I do weekly goals. And so I just make a table, a very basic table in Microsoft Word, and just the number of weeks in it and how many words I have to hit each week. And it's always very exciting if I go slightly over, because that means that I can do a few less the following week. And I found that does work for me, doing it weekly, because some days are just complete wipeouts. I don't write every day, even though I know that that's a sort of holy grail, but I find that really difficult. But I can write, even if it's just a little bit every week. So yeah, but no, I don't have any fancy tech that you can buy. So yeah.
I wrote loads of mine in the notes section of my ancient iPhone, and I have heard very good things. I've never done this, but about people speaking into it who like you were saying about driving. My friend did some non-fiction work where she was talking to herself and recording it on her iPhone while she was driving around, and then the software was getting most of it, and then she was like the equivalent of taking notes to save time.
That's great though, if you're just reading aloud, like speaking aloud, and then by the end of the week you've kind of written 10,000 words and you haven't actually typed one of them.
I was thinking about it because I spend a lot of time walking the dog, and I was thinking, would that work? Would people just think I was absolutely nuts walking the dog and talking to myself? You'd have to pretend you're on the phone.
I have nothing fancy. If I write on my phone, I get paranoid that I'll lose it, so I email myself and send it when I'm stopped, and I just write into Word. And I do like a post-it note in different colours for when I'm sort of spread out next to me, but basically nothing remotely fancy.
I'm the same. I'm a big fan of post-it notes, for the single sentence chapter. I just use Word. I did try Scrivener, but I really couldn't get on with it, although I do have writing friends who absolutely love it. And the same with the spoken word software. I think Dragon software is one that seems to be quite popular. But no, I can't imagine what a page would look like if it was me talking it. It would just be, I think it would probably take me longer to sort it out than if I just actually typed it. But I think that's just me with chaotic speech patterns.
I think it's also working with things that you're familiar with and comfortable with. I think if if you're somebody who is used to or is excited by new technology and new things, and I imagine some of these things might be fantastic to use, but yeah, similarly I find Word is the easiest thing to do because it's what you know, and I guess trying to kind of learn something else while trying to hold a story in your head, sometimes one thing too many, isn't it?
It just becomes another thing to procrastinate with.
Yeah,
I do have one thing that's been a game changer whenever I've shown it to writing students, which is a notebook with sections. It's very old school, but you get these in Paperchase. I really should get a cut from Paperchase. Oh, look, Laura's got one. Has everyone got one? Everyone's showing.
I've got a shiny new one that's not out of the thing yet, but yeah.
Clearly, people, this is what all writers are using. So when you've got a big novel that you're trying to make sense of, I don't know how everyone else does it. I have a couple of sections of the main characters where I can put things about them, and one about the timeline, which is always a bit awry, and another one where I just keep notes of things I need to do. So yeah, very low tech. We all seem quite low tech. I like that.
I think also, like, I've got a friend who did a whole book in A4 on A4 lined paper, like the 1.99 pad you get from WHS, and that's what she worked best. I find that I can type quicker than I can handwrite, and I think faster than I can do either. So I still get myself in a muddle with typing, but I find it much easier to type fast than do the other things. And I think that just is personal preference. But if something like that works, I would stick with it because I definitely do my best stuff that way. I have used notebooks when my son was in hospital and I didn't have a notebook and things like that. But I think if you go with what you like, rather than don't copy just because somebody's a published author, they might be doing something that would never work for you, and vice versa. Because I definitely wasted years trying to do what other people did and thinking like, oh my God, I haven't got a timeline that fits Save the Cat. I can't possibly be a writer. I mean, I almost want to pick my laptop up and show you the entire shelf. And I've kept it almost like as a monument to remind me of all the writing books that I have wasted time reading. Not because they weren't really useful, but as in, I probably didn't need to read 54 of them. And I think, do it, just do it. If you want to write a book, just do it, start it. It's the most radical advice.
Everybody's got a notebook of sorts as well, though. I think I know it sounds very basic, like say very simple, but having something that you have got that you can write with at any time. So there is no, you don't have your laptop or you don't have whatever, when you've got a thought, if there's a way that you can commit it to your phone or your pad or whatever it is, so that then you are, you're not going to have lost that thought by the time you get home. You've got your computer out.
I heard a great story about Agatha Christie. So I love her for lots of reasons. And so I do have a notebook, but unfortunately I have like 35 of them as well, like all around the house. So I think an idea, I write it down, and I can't remember which notebook it was in. And they said, what do you do? Do you write it down? And she said, oh yes, I pick up any bit of paper that's nearby and I write it down and I put it in my pocket and I forget about it and I never use it again. That's what I do when I have an idea. And I love that. Like, so she, like me, walked around writing things down and just completely forgetting them.
I think it helps if you can read your own handwriting. Yes, I have scribbled notes on everything from toilet paper to receipts, and then I've come back to it and thought, what the Jiminy Crickets is that?
Yeah, it's like when you wake up in the middle of the night and you've got a great idea, and then you wake up in the morning and you read it and you're like, what have monkeys got to do with this?
And with writers, so it sounds like everybody has come to writing at different points in your in your kind of career and your life. Like, we've kind of talked about that balance of how you fit in the writing and slot it in around all the other challenges you have. But was there a point for you when you felt like you could say and own being a writer, that you'd find yourself kind of introducing yourself as such? And it's like, what's that transition like? Is there a kind of a tipping point, or is it just is there still that point where there's kind of a maybe slight element of self-doubt, or you're all like established published writers? Yes, I guess for some of our writers who are at the very beginning of their career, or are experimenting with the idea of being a writer, what would you say? Like, what does it feel like to be a writer, or does it feel like anything? So Laura, if we start with you.
I still hesitate now occasionally, if I'm 100% honest. Particularly at things like parties, because it can avoid, people ask really inappropriate questions the moment you say you're a writer sometimes. But let me think seriously about this. I think it was probably, for me, the transition was probably getting a publishing deal for the first novel, because I'd had a few short stories published. I'd done quite, a little bit of journalism, quite a lot of copywriting. So I had seen my words in print in different formats, but I think it was having the novel published. As much as anything, it's almost like you're forced to describe yourself that way, because you have to do events and interviews and all that sort of thing. But yeah, ultimately though, what I would say to people who are starting out, who are emerging, in a way, if you write, you are a writer, aren't you? It might sound a bit kind of existential, but if I write, therefore, if you write, you're a writer. I have nothing more intelligent to say on that.
No, I think that's brilliant. It's taking ownership of it, isn't it? And saying,
yeah,
just if you say it enough, and that thing where people kind of ask you out of context what you do, and to say that you write, it kind of throws up a myriad of questions, which if you said you did something which maybe people could kind of explain away much more easily, you wouldn't be interrogated so much about.
I mean, it's that age-old thing that sometimes, if you say you're a writer, somebody will say something like, oh, I'm going to write a book when I get a bit of time or something, and it's a nice sort of, and that may be true, but in the same way, it's like, I can run, but I would never describe myself as an athlete, But if you're,
and as well in that context,
and you're writing, you're a writer.
And also in the context of like you were saying at a party, you might not necessarily want to be talking about what you're writing. So this opens a whole other kind of thing, and then you're suddenly getting someone that feedback from someone that you wouldn't necessarily want to have it from at that moment.
Yes, you might not necessarily want to tell people like what the plot for your new book is while you're having a beer in your local.
Yeah, I think also.
And what about you, Beth? Luce, sorry, yeah.
No, I was just going to say I agree with Laura that I think it was getting a contract which made me more able to sue it, but I was still very squeamish, and sort of much like Laura was saying, I have a really good friend who's an artist, and I would have no problem describing her as an artist. She paints pictures, she sells them, they're great. But for years she didn't describe herself that way, and she forced me to go on moo.com and make business cards that said author, and there is something to be said, much like Laura's thing, of trying to own it. But I certainly felt weird about it until I had a contract, and now I feel weird because I haven't published a second book. So then people are like, well, what's your second book on? So
just coming in chat, and we've got a question here from Lucy, who's asked, has the past year's experience changed anything about what you're writing about? Have you changed your subject matter at all? Jo, if I can ask that question of you, because I know both of your books have been published during lockdown, haven't they? Is that right?
I would say that no, I mean, my books are rom-coms and they are not set in lockdown. But my editor did point out with my first one that it was my first draft. My editor did say, this is really, really sweary. And I was like, well, I mean, I've written this while homeschooling 5 children. Of course it's sweary. And then the second book, I had the copy editor did point out a couple of maybe slightly intolerant comments on children, and I was like, again, we've now, you know, we're into our 3rd lockdown with a lot of children in my case, and yeah, I mean, I am intolerant now of children, there you go, but I did tone the swearing down and the intolerance, but I mean, no, I think certainly I have noticed that if you're going through a particularly intense time in your life doing something, actually the way you're writing, maybe your humor is more savage, or you're swearier, or whatever it might be, or a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, whatever, you know, I think it does have an effect on your writing, but I haven't actually, you know, I am not sort of going into a different, you know, I'm not going into writing about murders, say, or whatever else I might be tempted to write about because of lockdown. But I do think, yes, you probably do see it, certainly in a first draft, there's an influence from your outside environment.
Yes, I think that makes an awful lot of sense. And I think also if you're beginning something as well during something where things have changed beyond recognition, it's quite like your kind of go-tos are different, aren't they? The things that you would normally do in terms of routine. And yeah, I started at the beginning of the pandemic, I was writing a book that was set on a campsite set in the 90s. And I had to park that because I just couldn't imagine being on a campsite again. And so it just felt very disingenuous.
And actually, very similarly, my 3rd book is coming out, it's a Christmas book coming out in October. And my 4th book, which I'm planning now, will be out next sort of Easter-ish. And that is a summer book. And it's going to be set on an island. And it started off, it was going to be set on a Scottish island. And I was just like, I actually don't want to write about the UK right now. I want to write about a holiday that I cannot go on, probably. And it's going to be set on a Greek island because I'd like to go to a Greek island. So I'd like to write about a Greek island, you know, more than right now than I would like to write about a Scottish island. And obviously Scottish islands, there are many beautiful, beautiful, wonderful Scottish islands, but right now probably quite a lot of us are hankering after going somewhere a little bit further away. So I think it's bound to have an effect, isn't it? What we've all just lived through.
And that also sounds like a very good research project when you're allowed to as well.
Yes, exactly.
On your own, maybe.
Yes, indeed, for an extended period. Yes.
I write memoir and non-fiction, and I have had to change my 2nd book, which is partly why it's got a bit stally, because it's about chronic illness and recovery. And the last chapter was called New Normal, and then that got cannibalized. So actually, in fact, a lot of the language of chronic illness has been sort of cannibalized by our language about lockdown. And it's been really interesting. So, and we're at this sort of stage where I'm having a conversation with my agent tomorrow about how far we go with that, whether I actually have to just acknowledge it, because I think it's a really funny thing in writer circles and publishing circles. There's quite a lot of division about whether we should be acknowledging it or not. And you can see that in like American drama, like you've got Grey's Anatomy going like full throttle totally into full lockdown pandemic, and other programs absolutely acting like nothing has changed. And I think it's probably the same for everyone writing right now, right? You've got to sort of try and make your piece whichever feels better, because I found it quite hard to not think about it all the time. But as I think some other people are just like, I can't engage with pandemic stuff. I suppose it depends on your genre as well.
I mean, an awful lot of contemporary novels set in 2018 and 2019.
Yes.
Yeah, I wrote a piece for the Author magazine about a sort of comical piece about, you know, how to set your book when you've got this going on. But interestingly, by the time I'd written it and submitted it, he said, "Oh, I think the moment's passed." So clearly we're still wrestling with this, but yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how it pans out.
I'm really interested in what people's responses are going to be. I think that it will be really interesting to see how this actually does manifest in the next 5 or 6 years in terms of fiction and non-fiction, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't think people should feel wrong if they're writing about it.
Yeah, and I think people are going to want to, I mean, once it's hopefully over soon, you know, there will be the sort of references to, oh, you've obviously got a lockdown haircut or whatever it might be. People will, you know, in 5 years' time, if you're writing contemporary fiction, you'll say, oh, yeah, I ended up being locked down with my flatmate and such, you know, little references, because otherwise it's kind of weird to pretend that something, because it's you know, it's gone on for a lot longer than we all expected, and it's clearly going to continue to go on. Certainly where I am getting, everyone's got COVID, or again, suddenly I've got friends, my kids' schools and so on. So, you know, it's such a huge thing in people's lives. I think generally readers, I feel, probably do want, not necessarily why we're all in it, but in future there'll be references, won't there? Because otherwise it would just be odd. It wouldn't be contemporary fiction, it would be, you know. But I probably right now, I think probably people don't necessarily want to read about lockdown life yet, be my feeling.
I think there was something that I think we were only in about June of last year, and the first kind of lockdown love book had been published. I thought, gosh, you know, I don't think I want to read that. But yes, I think you're right that these things are they have to kind of, if you're writing contemporary fiction that's set now, unless it's kind of going to be, yes, something that's, you're using very different themes, it is going to weave its way in somehow, isn't it?
I saw Val McDermid was talking at Hay, and her book that's coming out is a pandemic book, which was written, they delivered the draft. It's, you know, one of those like crazy, like on the 20th of February 2020, and then it will happen. And so it's going to be around, I think. Yeah,
dystopian writers have got to work a bit harder at the moment.
Right.
Do you think we've got any more questions in the chat? We've got a question here from Shabana, who says, how do you think up your characters' names? So, Laura, can I start with you? I'm just thinking, because your books are all set in kind of quite different times as well, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, sort of my contemporary fiction ones run from the kind of mid-80s through to now-ish, just before now. I'm currently working on a historical. So much depends on a character's age and their socioeconomic background, particularly for books that are maybe set, I say 80s, 90s, not, you know, we can normally have a guess. You don't meet many 10-year-olds called Tracy or Sharon, for example, whereas I know a number of middle-aged women like myself with names like that. So, and I think where a character is born in the country has its part to play as well, you know, and that's, you know, the obviously Irish, Welsh or Scottish names. And then there's that whole thing about, you then have to think about the other characters that you've got in the book as well. So you don't want all your characters' names beginning with the letter A or B, or you don't all want them to be really short. You know, they have to be distinct enough from each other. And then, you know, second draft, they might all change, you know, and that can be quite, I've certainly found that quite hard actually when I've had to change a leading character's name. I still tend to think of them, you know. I had a leading character called Quinn, and my editor was like, oh, that's just too unusual, you've got to change that, nobody will remember that name. So I did change her name, but that character will always remain as Quinn to me in my heart, you know. And again, you know, as I say, my current work in progress is historical. It's set near enough 100 years ago. And actually, interestingly, they're dealing with the aftermath of another big pandemic, the Spanish flu. So again, I then had to think about the sorts of names that were popular then. I love graveyards, and they're really, really great if you're looking for unusual names or period pieces that, you know, it's a bit macabre, but that's me. But yeah, have a good old stomp around your local graveyard, as well as getting a baby book, which, you know, we're all mothers, aren't we? So we've probably all got those baby books. And and also I can't remember the name of the website, but of course it's great now that you can just go onto Google and you can see which names were popular in which year. So, you know, when your character's been born. So you can just go really, really popular girls' names in 1999 or whatever it is. I don't even know if I answered the question.
Absolutely.
Do you find then with the characters that you're writing, I guess this was more for the fiction writers, do you find that people have said people see themselves in the characters that you're writing? So, you know, you've written somebody and then you've got something like, well, definitely inspired by me, or you know, do you find that, or you know, are you writing kind of close to your own experience and people don't see themselves in the characters where they are there? Have you ever kind of got yourself in a bit of a sticky situation where somebody sees themselves in any of your books? Beth, have you?
I don't think so. I mean, I do use bits of people that I know, but I think either people are so, you know, flattered that they have, you know, they don't want to tell me. I don't know, or so unflattered that they're really horrified. I don't think I think I've disguised them all reasonably well. But I mean, everyone says your first novel tends to be very autobiographical, and so in my first novel, I think there was a lot of my relatives were reading it and seeing themselves, and they were probably right, to be fair. But as time's gone on, I think I've got better at disguising people, hopefully. Yeah, no, no one's sued me yet anyway. I haven't.
In my memoir, I had to change everyone's names for privacy reasons, because a lot of it was set in hospitals and things, and like just because somebody gave me an indignant urogynecological examination doesn't mean they wanted to be my book, so I had to kind of elide them. But I was doing a lot of things that I think fiction writers do, so I chose names that were similar to the age, but also looking at like what they meant. And I do that in fiction as well. So I've been looking for like a really good name that means clarity, for example, because I want one of the characters that to be her defining thing. So I sometimes do things like that. But do people recognize themselves? I mean, I got a message the other day from a woman who I don't know, who's like sent via her friend, who said that she was in a London hospital. I don't think it was the one where I was treated, but where a urogynecologic nurse arrived and very confidently said, "I'm Carol." And I don't know if it was the nurse that is in the book, but she people definitely saw themselves in the flattering things. But conversely, when I met my consultant, who I described as the Waz Wizard in the book, that's his name, I described him quite differently, because you have to, you know, anonymize people and stuff, and I'd forgotten what he actually looked like. So when he walked in, I was like, "Oh my god, you're really short." "Oh no, you're not short. I made that up for my book. I forgot what you actually look like." So you can persuade yourself of anything in your writing.
So it's almost like having kind of a dual life as well, that you have that, yes, to kind of create this within a memoir, but with some kind of artistic license.
Taking other people's stories, and that's much like where you do with fiction. So you have to be quite careful. Like with my children, they're their stories, not mine. Or, you know, so the deal is that everything that happens with the children is true in the book, but it's not necessarily attributed to the right child, and that was the deal we struck. And they read all the bits about them and were happy with them. But there was a lot of sort of playing around. But in a way, when I've been writing fiction, it's actually quite often a very similar sort of process where you're trying to work out, like, is that something that my friend said? Can I really take that, or that line, or am I going to have to? What would it sound like out of somebody else's mouth? Or what if they were a man? You know, because that's what you have to do in memoir as well. If you're anonymizing people. Some people, you just switch everything.
I was out for obviously we all walked for several months at the beginning of this year, and I was on one of my walks and I bumped into a friend of a friend who had read my first book, and my first book is a rom-com, and there's the sort of love at first sight thing, but the hero, it's his wedding day, so nothing happens, and and it takes place over sort of 14-15 years. And this woman said to me, well, I drove past your husband the other day and I am looking at him in a new light because he is clearly the hero. And I was just like, he clearly isn't. And I mean, it's such a different story. It really is not autobiographical, but yeah, I have had people and yeah, saw some university friends who were just saying, we can't work out who is who. And I said, it's not real. I made those people up. And they were going, well, you clearly didn't make them up. So, who's Emma? Who's this? Who's that? And I was like, no, really made up. And if I hadn't made them up, I wouldn't, if I had just used someone, I wouldn't admit it. Unless it was very, very flattering.
In fiction, when people they say who's, when I've showed drafts, my friends like, who's that? And it's like, well, they're all me, aren't they? Like, if let's be honest, like they're all me. Yes. Like essentially, they're just different me's. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm too narcissistic. No,
one of my girlfriends, actually, the first one who read it, because she bought, she said to me, she just said, my heroine is called Izzy. She just went, Izzy is you. That you've just written a story about yourself. And I was like, oh. And then you kind of go, did you like her?
Try a memoir, because that's the thing when you've actually written, when somebody said something I didn't like, I was like, that's me you're talking about.
That's awkward.
Have we got any more in the Q&A, Sam?
So we've got one from Parveen that says, what does success mean to you as a writer? Which I feel like that was a little bit like the one we asked before about when you felt like you could call yourself a writer. And then from Amy, how were you discovered as a writer? So I suppose that's what was your route into getting published? Laura, do you want to? Sorry, we keep kicking off with you, don't we? But have you,
Well, actually, I kind of know that myself. Is I entered competitions. It was well, first of all, there were deadlines, and I'm quite deadline driven.
Yeah.
So it was really great because you have these, obviously, the deadline by which you've got to submit. And for me, it was also a way of kind of monitoring my progress. Unfortunately, I think like the very first or the second competition that I entered, I won something and it got published. So I did a little bit that kind of like, oh, this is going to be quite easy. Of course it wasn't. I soon learned after, like about 25, just nothing at all. Thanks, but no thanks. And so it was a way that I could kind of, or I felt I could see that I was making some kind of progress if I got some comments back, and all that sort of thing. And somehow, short stories, there are quite a lot of competitions around, Writing Magazine for one, as well as Dyslexia. They have details of all the competitions that are out there, so that was kind of useful for me.
And then was that the step in getting a contract for a novel as well?
Yeah, well, actually that came out of a competition. I got agent interest in it. I did that thing, where it was 2009 or 2010, so I bought like the old Writers and Artists yearbook, the great big doorstop, of which nobody does anymore, or very few people do, and submitted to half a dozen agents. And I had some interest, and one agent was sending it out for me, but it didn't get picked up through him. But I'd entered it into a number of competitions, and I've been shortlisted in a couple. And then there was this one outstanding one, which I'd actually just forgotten about. And it was within the same fortnight, the agent sort of phoned up and said, "Oh, well, I can't place this, so I don't really think we're going anywhere together, Laura." And then I got this phone call saying that I'd won the competition and a very teeny tiny publisher wanted to publish it. So that was how it happened for me. I would never say I made it happen, or what, you know, it's a funny industry like that. I think you just have to keep on putting stuff out there.
Yeah, like a numbers game.
I feel so, yeah. Actually, it's a bit, you know, mud against wall. I'd be interested to hear what, you know, Jo, Beth, Luce, well, all of us have got to say, because everyone's experience is really different,
Yeah.
as well.
I'm just quite aware of time as well. We've only got a few minutes left, but it'd be really great to just kind of maybe in a couple of sentences kind of hear. I know it's quite difficult to distill an entire writing career and successful published book into that, but yeah, just so we
I can do it really quickly. I mean, I got my agent through a friend actually, but because I've been publishing stuff in a blog and online and on Twitter, and I got my agent, and she was like, "We need she basically said, for us to sell this book, you need to get it published in the right. You need to get articles published." So I went off and got published in The Pool, which no longer exists, and in The Guardian, and that's so. It is possible to do it that way through social media. I think that world is quite interesting, and I know other people who have managed to get agents via Twitter. So Twitter is very literary at the moment. It will be something else in a few years' time, but if you're interested in it now, that is a way people do genuinely get agents. So it's quite an interesting place to be and to start putting your work and as I say, getting things into other publications. So I didn't do any competitions or anything. I did it all by blogging. And then the blog was there. I had like 100,000 words for them to look through.
Brilliant. And Beth?
Yeah, just tons of rejections. I just got rejected really a lot, and then kept getting rejected. And then there were some more rejections. That's my story.
And then not a rejection.
Oh yeah, eventually, yeah.
I can say that actually the rejection never stops.
No,
You know,
that's true, I think.
my agent is struggling to sell my latest book. Rejection.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Sorry.
And Jo, for you?
My sister nagged me to enter a competition. So again, competition, Good Housekeeping, Orion competition, with which was just 5,000 words and a synopsis. So I entered that, and wrote it in about 3 days with a toddler climbing all over me, and then just completely out of the blue got an email saying I was runner-up and I'd won a laptop, which I still use, which was incredibly exciting and made me think, actually there's something in this, so I will finish this book. That was the first book I finished, and 90,000 words is hard, and it's hard to write a whole book. And then I entered that book in the Comedy Women in Print competition and was shortlisted, and there was a big awards evening, so met lots of people and was very lucky to get some feedback from a HarperCollins editor, which was really, really helpful. And then I started submitting that book. I did nothing with it because I got a lot of different feedback. Kind of half the people said, amazing hook, not enough tension. And the other half said, love the content, but there's no hook. So I had no idea how to edit it. So I didn't edit it. So that book has never been published because it's essentially a first draft. But it did start conversations. And it was basically from that, my editor said, I'd like to talk to you about writing other stuff that we would like to publish, and that's how it happened for me. So it wasn't that book, but writing a book that doesn't subsequently get published is still an amazing learning experience, and you have to go through that phase. But yeah, for me, competitions, and so getting that feedback from industry professionals was invaluable.
Brilliant. Thank you, and just thank you everyone else who's put questions into the chat box. I'm afraid we didn't get round to all of them.
Sam, sorry, can I just say, if you did have a question and you didn't get an answer, I don't know if the others feel this way, but if I'm on Twitter at Dr. Beth Miller, if you want to ask your question there, I'm really happy to answer it.
Brilliant.
At Luce Brett, I'm really happy.
Thank you so much, and it's just been really lovely chatting with all of you, and thank you so much for coming and sharing all of your experiences with us. We have got, just to say quickly for everyone watching, we've got another event in 2 weeks' time with Lorraine Brown, Suhaila El Bushra, Louise Fain and Zoe Somerville. So yeah, just sign up again. The links will be out on the Eventbrite as well. But yeah, thank you all again for coming.
Can we just say a quick thank you to New Writing South and also to the Arts Council who've supported us to do this as well. And yeah, just echo what Sam said. Thank you to all our panelists. What a great evening.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Keep writing.